Hello, I'm Aaron Williams, creator of Nodwick and Full Frontal Nerdity, and you're listening to Roll for Initiative, the only first edition AD&D gaming podcast.
Correctly with the correct amount.
D20 Radio, where gamers roll.
www.d20radio.com. Roll for Initiative.
Hello, folks, and welcome to the Roll for Initiative podcast, issue number 30. That's right, we've turned 30 issues, finally at the big 3-0. I'm one of your hosts, DM Vincent, and in this corner, weighing in at 175, 6'1", DM Jason! Yay! So, yeah,
I'm a little taller than that, but you're actually pretty close.
And in the opposing corner, the challenger tonight. Unknown, and unknown, DM Nick.
Ugh, I'm going to take you down. I'm going to roll a crit on you.
That's right. And special guest tonight, the Mad Irishman himself, Patrick Murphy. Patrick, how are you tonight?
I'm doing well. How are you guys doing?
Wonderful.
Very, very well.
If anyone's not familiar, Patrick does his own website with various character sheets for various old school games, new school games, and any school game you can think of. But we'll get to that a little bit later.
Yes.
So let's get ready to roll some dice. Anyway, yeah, that's kind of bad. So, first thing on the agenda tonight, let's talk about our Skype games. Jason, let's go with yours first, because I'm dying to hear about your Skype game.
Oh, geez, yeah. So, I wanted to give a little hello to all of the people that have joined the game. So, and the Skype game's pretty big. We've got Grey Wolf, Carl, Buzz, Vince, John, and Rich all playing. And it's a testament to how good they are as players and to how well Skype handles, just online gaming can really work, that this 7-person gaming group, including the DM, is going so smoothly. But I've got 2 different groups, actually, going through this campaign that I'm creating as it goes along. And we're starting, of course, in the village of Hogsend. And the other group that's playing is here in New York. It includes my old friend Andrew and 3 new friends, Robert, Brian, and David, and nobody named Dennis.
Okay.
Which my players will understand. I don't know. We had a ghost named Dennis that showed up on our mailing list, and I kept wondering why Dennis wasn't showing up to the games. Turns out there's no Dennis. But it's going really good. They are all... I'll tell you, the guys who are playing in person, they managed to, in one session, get all the way to the second level of the dungeon, where the Skype guys had taken 3 weeks to get there. Well, 3 sessions. So it's interesting because I set up this huge sort of area of diversions and monsters and things for people to fall into and have trouble with before they finally got to figuring out how to get down to the second level. And the group that's here in New York, they just went straight to it. They outsmarted their DM. It was wonderful.
Wow. Cool.
Nice.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
How's yours going?
Oh, excellent. We just finished up the second session with actually almost the full entire group. First session was only 2 players, and the magic user in the group wanted to get his spells, and I was just like, you know what? This is an excellent opportunity to roleplay and get him back into the game, because he hasn't played in probably, he said 15, 20 years. So I figured him and another person, Chuck, so Chuck and Jack, the 2 of them came on Skype with me. We did a prelude. We got his spells and his spell book, and then sunk the hooker in for the whole campaign.
I hope you meant you sunk the hook in.
Yeah, that's it. And
don't put the hooker in.
No.
You're playing a totally different role-playing.
Yeah, that's different role-playing in itself. And second episode involved 4 characters, where we picked up a dwarven fighter and an elven thief. And there was a lot of fun, a lot of spookiness going on. People have listened to it and enjoyed the dwarf, who is kind of getting picked on in the episode, but he had a lot of fun with the zombie horse and the voices laughing and speaking at him, making him go insane. So
nice.
Yeah, you've got a lot more demi-humans than we have in our groups.
Really?
It's interesting. Yeah, in each of our groups, we only have one. There's a half-elf in one group and a gnome in the other. That's it.
This upcoming Thursday, there's supposed to be 2 more players joining. I got to figure out how to bring them in too. So.
Oh, you mean how to like work in what's happening with them?
Yeah, because they weren't with the party, so I got to figure out how to get them into the party. So.
Oh,
yeah, in my
that's always
case,
a toughie.
It is. In my case, we had our first complete kill in the Skype group, and so I wanted
TPK?
No. The first complete kill of a single player. I mean, we had two. Okay. We had 2 kills, but the first kill was just put in a coma and revived. Minus 3 hit points and all that. The other one was, he. I can say this now that it's happened. He got killed by some Kampfholt. I don't know if you know the Kampfholt, but it's a treacherous monster that looks just like some tree roots.
Oh, yeah, that's on Monster Manual 2, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, and he got killed by that. There was no way to bring him back. So what I did was
I killed by a tree.
Yeah. Oh, the best part, it was the druid.
Nice.
Oh, irony.
Oh man.
Yes, thy name is DM. But we brought in the new character because it just so happened that in this particular set of catacombs, I had a set of what looked like statues, but are in fact what do you call it? What's the thing? You're in stasis. Temporal stasis.
Frozen.
And so I just swapped out one of the temporal stasis statues for his new character and had this character who had been imprisoned there a couple years ago, and they managed to release him, and now he's in the party.
Woo!
So
nice.
You can listen to all this. Jason should be up shortly. He's having it edited for content purposes. So, but just split it up.
Cut it into fourths or whatever. I mean, I think yours sounds a lot more entertaining. We just sort of played the game and recorded it.
Yeah, I was kind of designing mine for the players and for someone actually sitting along listening for entertainment. So I tried to do both, cater to both people.
Yeah. Ours is really, if you listen to ours, you'll basically hear just a bunch of people playing. We don't have the censor filter on, so you will hear swear words. But it's not going to be as oriented for listeners necessarily, but you'll still listen and like it. It's still good. It's
still a good idea of how a DM style works.
Cool. Yeah, that's the big thing is you'll hear the difference between our 2 different DM styles.
Yes, Jason's buy the book, stick his nose in there, and mine just roll dice.
Yep. Well, you'll hear it. Mine goes just fast. It goes just as fast. It's just a little bit more of a grognardy kind of way of hitting some of the rules.
Somewhere in between, I think. I don't know.
Nick
we got to get you running a game.
Yeah, Nick.
Well, yeah. Yesterday, Saturday, I was in a game. We had kind of a guest DM. He's up from Alabama. I knew from a few years ago. Met him at he was either Origins or Gen Con. His name's Nate. If he's listening, hey Nate. And one of the games that he ran, it was just 2 years ago, he ran it at Origins, and everybody had a blast at, was his adventure called Nightmare at Frandor's Keep, which
nice.
is... Yeah. It's if you're familiar with the Hackmaster version of Keep of the Borderlands...
No.
It's that, but imagine 28 Days Later, the movie.
That sounds awesome.
Borderlands.
Yeah, that does.
It was tough. Oh my gosh. Yeah, fast zombies coming from everywhere. There's and he had special rules for overbearing. We had one person taken down rather quickly. One bite, and he was just totally thrown down to the ground. But we actually get in past the courtyard. It was that tough. Nice. It was really, really fun. Just trying to take... I'm glad we had a magic user along. I mean, thank goodness for fireballs. Oh, my gosh.
How about a priest?
Oh, yeah. We had 2 clerics. I was playing one of them. We had 2 ninth-level clerics, and unfortunately, these type of undead that he made, you can't turn them. They're not affected by anything like protection from evil or anything like that, because they're a...
Virus
genetic,
zombie? Yeah,
they're a virus-made zombie.
Well, if they're like the 28 Days Later movie, then it's definitely not a real zombie. So,
Yeah, because one of the characters
Not a
was,
real zombie.
No, it's not a real zombie, Jason. Okay,
You know,
Yeah,
they're
the
not real, genuine zombies like you find in real life.
they're not George A. Romero zombies. Okay, pal,
No,
they're
not the ones that just like are slow and shuffling. These ones will chase your keister down and have your butt for a sandwich.
I actually saw a bumper sticker the other day that said "Zombies don't run."
Last night, I wish they didn't.
Yeah,
Because we had one character. It was the magic user. He was taken down by 400 zombie pixie fairies. Yeah,
What?
It was pretty. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And
I actually there's a monster I want to write up for AD&D because some friends of mine who are from China are really into these old 1970s Chinese vampire movies. Have you ever seen them?
Mm-hmm.
You know, the ones where they stick their arms out and they hop?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd never heard of them before, so I want to make those. I think they're called Jiangxi. I want to make those Chinese vampires. They're sort of half zombie, half vampire, and they hop.
oh yeah.
So if you want to listen to the podcast, you can go to www.rfiactualplay.tk. And you can listen to the podcast. There's 2 up for mine. Jason's will be up soon, and that's that.
Nick, better start a game.
Yeah, Nick.
All right. If I
Sure, we got some
time.
listeners that'd be up for it.
Yes.
If I have time.
The
I
Nick-
have to check
Actually,
with the boss.
I
My
met a
wife.
guy on the street the other day who would probably want to join.
Yeah.
I was walking down the street wearing a Dungeons and Dragons t-shirt, like the one that looks like the Mountain Dew logo.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
I heard this voice behind me. He's like, "Dungeons and Dragons? Is that the tabletop or the video game?" And I was like, who's talking to me? What? And I turn around.
Get the voices out of my head.
Right. And I turn around, and it's like, I'm just out on a New York street, tons of people out. And I'm looking kind of down, really, to see who'd be saying it. And I end up looking up about 4 inches into, like, this huge dude's face. And he's just this big dude. And I was like, oh, no, what? And then he starts telling me, I used to play a magic user back in the 80s when I was in the Army.
Oh, no. He started with a character story. Run!
No, it was awesome. It was such a great, like, sidewalk moment. This
Cool.
guy who, like, you look at him, he's this big dude that, Army dude and all this kind of stuff. Never would have pegged him off the bat. And he just starts telling me about this. And so, maybe he's listening right now. I didn't write his name down, but it was something. If he's listening right now, I probably shouldn't get his name wrong, but it started with an M. It was like Maliki or something. But anyways, really, really cool guy. So that was just kind of a neat thing.
That's if you want to know where Jason lives, email rfistaff@gmail.com to beat him up anytime soon.
Yeah. Because Nick, didn't you start playing in the service? Or no?
Actually, no. But I did have a pretty good gaming group. I was in San Diego. It was a really good time there.
Yeah, I heard there's a lot of good gaming groups over there. Jason, articles.
Yep.
Didn't Todd put up a new one?
Yeah, we got a new one for this week. We always have a new one for this week. Todd Hughes is really, delivering some great stuff. I mean, people over at the Dragon's Foot forums know him for the things that he's written over there. And
Todd is the man.
Yeah, we're really lucky to have him writing good things for us, too.
Awesome.
So this week it's called More Human Than Human. And
Rob Zombie's here?
Yep. Now that I got White Zombie stuck in your head.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, if Matt was able to put in some of that without violating copyright. Anyways.
Matt, put in like 5.5 seconds. That way we don't ruin any copyright.
Yeah, I think it's
5.5 seconds.
Hey, it's under 6, all right?
Yeah.
Well, anyway, so this week it's all about making the human a more attractive class in AD&D, and he has some ideas for ways of doing that. I won't go into all the specifics here, but it's a cool house rule kind of way to do things, and worth a read.
Awesome. And
there's some cool stuff in there.
Is his contest still going on?
I believe it is, yeah. So anybody who wants to design a monster for the module that he is writing can write to us or write to his email address, which we'll put in the show notes. And he wants to.
It's right in his article too.
Yep. He has a few things around it. Like I believe he doesn't want any undead.
Right.
And he needs it to be something you can live underground and for the right levels. But you can find all the details on the site.
Right. Definitely want to encourage people to go and read the article and comment and do lots of other fun things. So forums, that should be up shortly. I know we promised last time we should be up by now, but we just had a little technical snafu, but we fixed it.
Yeah,
We're
the
gonna whip
technical
those
snafu
kobolds into
rhymes
shape.
with. Yeah, it starts with a J and it rhymes with Asen.
Yeah.
I'm getting those up.
I wasn't going to say that, but And
I'm trying to set them up so when you go to any article, you'll be able to, rather than just commenting on the article and have your comments kind of trapped in that one place, that we can actually tie the forums to the articles so you can have a richer...
Hey, work those kobolds harder.
Yeah.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, sure, no problem. And guess what, guys? We got a voicemail.
All right.
Sweet.
This voicemail,
Love those.
I'm just going to play for you, and then we'll talk about it a second. So here we go.
This is Lass, and I date a grognard who listens to the R5 podcast. So I suppose I have to as well. Thank you. Love the show, guys.
Okay. And now
Can you provide a translation?
that was Lass from the D20 Radio forums. She said that she listens to the R5 podcast, and she's a grognard.
Oh,
cool.
Well, hello, Lass. Yeah, we've seen her around on the Facebook page and on the D20 forums. So
Oh, yeah, right. Off Facebook now.
yeah, she's always got good things to say, so nice to hear her voice.
Definitely. She left that today, and she calls herself Lass the Nomad. She's been all over the place. She said Ireland, the UK. Now she's in New York, so...
Oh, well then she's local for me.
Yeah, maybe she can...
yeah, put her in our game.
Yeah, go into your game. There you go,
Perfect.
Jason. Anyway, so that's going to end the intro unless we have anything else, and we'll head into Sage Advice.
Sage Advice.
So Sage Advice. Nick, you want to say it again?
Sage Advice.
You know, Nick, we do have bumpers.
Oh, sorry.
Rubber baby buggy bumpers?
Exactly.
Anyway, let's get right into the nitty-gritty here. Actually, the first email we had come in wasn't an email. It was from the D20 Radio forums. And it is from Lass. It's actually a really cool, interesting question, so you guys listen up. I was playing a fighter who had a person on her person a regular sword and a -1 cursed sword. We came across an encounter with a werewolf. As such, you need a +1 weapon to affect it. So I tried out the -1 weapon with the argument that since it's still magically imbued, it should be able to affect a magical creature. Loud debate, page flipping ensued before the GM conceded my point and gave me the roll to hit with -1 modifier. Do you think this was a correct ruling, or was this a pouty-faced, sad-eyed girl effect on the GM that gave me the ruling?
Absolutely correct. I vote absolutely correct.
It was a good ruling.
Great ruling.
I don't know about that.
I would have done the same way.
I think I would have too, because it is a magically imbued weapon.
I guess
Yeah,
so.
it
has a negative effect, but hey.
When they say you requires a magic weapon to hit, it doesn't say a magic weapon with a plus to hit. There's magic weapons out there that have no pluses at all, and they still count.
Yeah, but a werewolf, you need a +1 weapon or better to affect it. A -1 is a -1 weapon.
Oh, you know what? You know what? You're right. I was just thinking it needs a magical weapon to hit. It needs a +1.
Her argument pretty much was, well, it's still magical and it's -1. Why not allow me to hit with a magically -1 weapon? Is pretty much her argument.
You know what? This is one of those things where you're like, the rules say one thing, and still it's like, wow, that's a cool idea. Maybe I'll just let the player pull this off.
Yeah,
I think that's what it is. Yeah, it's a good bit of letting the player pull it off. But now that you put it that way, I didn't listen carefully enough. It's actually I wouldn't.
Yeah, I mean
do
it usually says +1 or better, not just magical weapons. So
yeah, and that's my specific argument a minute ago, which was that hey, there's some things with no pluses and they're still magic. Same thing here. If you pulled out a magical sword that had no actual pluses, then it wouldn't work either, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So it's basically
It is the pouty face.
Yeah, the pouty face that
that always works.
Yeah, that always works apparently.
Well, that's all right.
Yeah. Jason, next letter.
All right. So Peter B writes in and comments about clerics and their weapons, and he says here, "I'm siding with Jason on this." Now this time it's not like I did last week where I played you by not telling you the rest of the sentence. He really does side me on this. I think we shouldn't confuse a god's worshippers with their priesthood. For example, the closest that Norse traditions had to a priesthood were unarmed seeresses called Volva, whose name literally meant wand carrier or carrier of a magic staff. They didn't carry magic weapons, but participated in battle in symbolic means, using their wands or weaving looms, which means, historically speaking, clerics of Odin and Thor did not carry spears or hammers, although their worshippers certainly did. In short, having the ability to speak with unimaginably potent divine beings who grant them powers, clerics may be understandably less interested in conventional weapons. I think that the right way to distinguish between the gods that clerics worship is by the powers that they grant.
Cool. That was very...
It's a good point. Yeah, it's a good take on it.
Insightful.
Yeah, I disagree.
Well, I mean, it's a good take on it. Ultimately, my response to all of these is the rules say no edged weapons, so you can spend all day talking about why that rule is where it is, but if you want to play by the book, it's no edged weapons.
Yeah, sorry, Nick. I'm going to have to side with Jason on that one. I know you're different with that, but, you know.
Yeah, I'll stick up for you, Nick.
I kind of like the idea that
disconnect
the particular. Hey.
No, they're not wrong. That's the thing is that Patrick and Nick are not wrong.
There's
nothing wrong with playing it that way in your game.
It's
your
just
game.
Different. Yeah,
it's just
different.
Yeah, no, I definitely think both sides have excellent arguments for this. I think in a lot of cases though, it just comes down to your style of play, and do you want to be are you more worried about balance, or are you more worried about preserving that old school feel, and that you've got to have a mace if you're a cleric, or are you really obsessed with kind of like customizing and stripping down a religion and that kind of thing?
Yeah, exactly. There's nothing that says you have to play by the book. I was reading an article this morning. I was trying to find in the old Dragon magazines where they first started introducing AD&D as a concept. And somewhere around Dragon number 11 or 12, like late 70s, Gary Gygax wrote an article explaining, what the relationship was and all of the different things that were going on with D&D. And he said, look, we've got this guy, Moldave, who's going to write some stuff for us, so I think he'll do a good job and all that kind of stuff. And it just reminded me of just how loose and open and developing the rules always were. So there's nothing... Right. There's nothing that says that because you're playing a cleric the way that you feel makes more sense means you're not playing old school. You're probably playing more old school because you're making up your rules.
Yeah, true.
You're just, but if you wanted to say, listen, we're playing by the book, something you could have done at an RPGA tournament back in the day, that's a different story.
Okay. I'm with you on that one. Okay. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, it's just another way of doing it. So that's how I look at it as well.
Okay. Last letter, Nick, yours?
Yeah, we got a letter here from Scott O. And he's a new listener from England, so hello from there across the pond. I stumbled across your podcast by accident on iTunes, and I'm now totally hooked. I began playing D&D and AD&D in the early 80s at junior school with friends, and now getting back into the original games I played as a kid at the age of 37. Also, as a kid, and this is where it gets really cool. I think a lot of us can relate to this. I was a great fan of the Steve Jackson and Ian Livingstone fighting fantasy solo adventuring game books. Other books of this sort were the Lone Wolf Adventure books by Joe Deaver. Of course, there was the TSR Endless Quest solo adventure books that were done in the 80s. So I would be interested in hearing your thoughts about these books and any other solo game / modules connected with D&D and AD&D. Do you have any further recommendations of these kinds of books or games, and can I track them down and play? So, what I was able to do is, yes, you can find the Steve Jackson Fighting Fantasy game books still. There is a website for them, for fightingfantasygamebooks.com, and you can still find them on Amazon.com. And I remember these. I remember a lot of them. How about you, Vince? Do you remember those Endless Quest books and stuff like that back in the day?
No, actually, I didn't. I've never I was never a module person, or I never used any of those books, so I don't really remember them at all.
they're storybooks that you read, but
Was
it's
it
like
choose your own adventure type things?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Then
Pick
I
your own
did play
adventure
those.
type games.
Oh, yeah. Okay,
books.
then I did play those. All right, cool. I know there was. There was. I'm sorry, Jason. 1 second. I just had a thought really quick. I know there was a whole bunch of modules for OD&D that were solo campaign adventures that you had to roll dice and follow the path. Is that what he's talking about as well, or?
Yeah, but I think he's talking more about the actual little pocket books of like the Endless Quest ones and the Fighting Fantasy solo adventure books that they had by Steve Jackson and Ian Livingstone.
Oh, all right.
Because I remember TSR had those Endless Quest ones, and those were pretty cool. I remember those quite fondly from my youth. So,
Jason, sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, no, it's fine. I actually was trying to dig up the thing that I was going to talk about, which I'm not digging up very successfully. It was something that I saw on eBay earlier today, and it was like one of those sort of more choose-your-own-adventure-like type of things, and it was put up by TSR, and it was actually a comic.
Oh, really?
Oh, wow.
And do you know what I'm talking about? Because I don't.
I don't remember the comic book ones. All I remember were they had the ones by TSR, the Endless Quest ones, and they had the Super Endless Quest ones, which were actually the books, but they actually had a game mechanic that went along with them.
Maybe that's what I was seeing.
And then those were kind of in competition with the Fighting Fantasy books by Steve Jackson.
Okay.
Because those were the ones that were like solo modules. They had a game mechanic and everything with them.
Well, maybe somebody who's listening can call in or write in and tell us other things we're thinking of like that, because that's pretty interesting.
Yeah, they're very cool books, and you can still get them, the Fighting Fantasy ones, on Amazon.com. And so if our new listener is listening, you can definitely still find those. But as far as the TSR ones, they stopped producing them in the mid-'90s. But I'm sure you could find them on eBay. So, yeah, they're very, very cool. I remembered collecting all of those, and I wish I still had them. Because I know my kids would just go gaga for them.
Cool.
Do you guys remember those crazy modules that TSR had with the invisible ink?
Oh,
yes.
yeah.
I have Blizzard Pass. I have one of those.
Yeah.
Yeah,
yes.
What was it? Maze of the Riddling Minotaur or something
Maze
like
of
that?
the Riddling Minotaur, yes.
Wow, crazy.
Yeah, and then they had one for AD&D. It was, instead of using the marker, it used the little jewel, it used the little red screen, the little piece of red cellophane. I forget, Midnight at Dagger Alley. That's what it was called.
Yeah, I remember
Yes, I do.
I had that one. I don't know what happened to it.
You know, there's this we're going to talk about them in a future episode, but there's these guys, the Game Crafter, who do the on-demand game printing. They'll make box sets and screens and everything.
Oh, yeah,
I'm going to check with them and see if they have the ability to do things like magic ink, or whatever you call it. Mm-hmm. Because it would be, that's the thing is, if you get one of those old invisible ink modules, you're not going to want to do that. But it would be great to be able to make new versions.
Oh, the urge is there to do it, though. It's like, I got to do this. So,
Yeah, we'll see. We'll find out if the Game Crafter can do that or not. We'll have to ask them.
All right, so questions, comments, rfistaff@gmail.com. Contact us on Skype. You can contact me, AlucardD20. Or just go to the site, click on the link, and drop us a voicemail. So that'll end Sage Advice, and we'll head right into the guest spotlight for tonight.
Okay, so welcome to the guest spotlight, and we have our guest this week. Most people know him as the Mad Irishman. In fact, you can go to mad-irishman.net and see all about the things that he's made. We want to introduce for you today Patrick Murphy.
Hello, everybody.
Hi, Patrick.
Hey, Patrick.
Yeah, so we just heard your voice a little bit earlier on, but let's take a minute to introduce you to everyone. And for people who aren't familiar, The main reason that, at least that we first saw the Mad Irishman, was for the amazing reproductions of the TSR 9028 Goldenrod player character sheets.
Yes.
In fact, an improvement on the originals, ones that not only had all the original stuff, but I have some printouts of them here, and that actually allow you to add in things like Unearthed Arcana classes, and they're in a layered PDF, so you can quickly turn things on or off. Some amazing stuff. Patrick, do you want to tell us, just by way of introduction, some of the other things that you offer as well on the Mad Irishman site?
Sure. Character sheets, obviously, in great abundance, not only, like you said, for old school games, but some of the newer ones, God forbid I've even done D&D 4.0. But I've also got maps, maybe some, I think there's at least one adventure up there. And I also dabble in making fonts, mostly to support making character sheets. But anyway, you can find all of those things linked off my site.
So you're saying making fonts? You mean it's been a long time for me since I've done anything like that. It was Fontographer back when I was doing it. What's the tools now?
Actually, Fontographer is back. Just very recently. So there's a company called Font Lab, and they make a software package called Font Lab, and they also have several other tools. But they acquired the rights to Fontographer, and they recently just updated a little bit, so you can actually do all the kind of hardcore things with open type fonts and those kind of things, which are in most modern operating systems. So you should be right at home. You should be able to fall right back into that.
Well, I mean, we'll probably get into a couple things that are a little bit geeky for some people, but I'm really eager to ask you about this because we have some of our own projects where we've been going back and looking at those. But before we do, let's just kind of give a little bit more of an overview of some of the things that are available for people to get. They can go and they can pull down the PDFs, right?
Right.
And now, I actually, to be honest, I haven't gone through the other sheets. Do you always do them with the layers and allowing people to kind of modify the things that are going on inside of them?
Well, yeah, it depends a lot on when the sheet was made, and to some extent when I was playing the game.
Right.
So I couldn't believe it. I went back and looked at my site, and the site's actually been up for 12 years now.
Wow.
So, back in, I think, July was the 12-year anniversary.
Happy birthday.
Thanks.
Yeah.
And, in a lot of ways, it kind of follows the history of me making character sheets, and there are old ones that I was making before, ones that I'll never see again because they were on floppies. I was making with my Atari 1200 XL, back in the 80s or whatever.
Well, did you lose the floppies?
Actually, I have the floppies for the Atari.
We can rebuild it.
I'm hoping that those could be reproduced. What I'm kicking myself is I actually have a scan of the first D&D character sheet that I made on my Mac SE back in probably 1988, and it's bitmapped. So I like dot by dot drawn out. I think in Paint or Super Paint. I had my 1.0 character sheet, and now you can download it from my site, but the problem is, I don't have a soft copy of that anymore, at least not to my knowledge. So I had to I fortunately found where I had somebody else's character, and I just scanned in the sheet and took out his character parts. And anyway, that's all I have, sadly, is a scan of that sheet. But the older sheets don't have layers, and they were probably made with PageMaker back in the day, or something, or even something old like Super Paint.
Right.
But the newer sheets, I really have been trying to lean towards using layering, mostly because I get a lot of requests for little tweaks to the sheet, like, oh yeah, I love your sheet, but I don't use the rules for grappling, or I use my own thing. Can you get me a custom sheet? Well, I can't really do that kind of thing, for all the different requests I have. But I started thinking about it, and I thought, with layering, I could kind of play to that, though. I could kind of anticipate, what kind of things people might want to turn on or off about their sheet, and kind of empower them from the beginning to customize it to some extent.
Yeah, I mean
okay.
No, go ahead.
Oh, I just had a question on, where did this all start for you? I mean, where did it where you saw? Was it TSR put out a good character sheet, but I could do just one better? I mean,
right.
How did this all kind of go off for you? I mean,
right. Well, I mean, to some extent, you just start with kind of necessity, who as a teenager, I'm not going to be able to run out and buy, character sheets all the time. I can't afford, to buy these character sheets. So, here I am making. I think I've still got somewhere a Middle Earth role playing character sheet I made with Atari Writer. And
nice.
it's funny because it's there's no graphics, of course, whatsoever. It's just text with blanks. But it's amazing. When I saw it, I was like, wow, this must have taken me forever to do it. And why did I do it? And, it was probably because I just needed a character sheet and didn't want to write on notebook paper. And, so just kind of like, well, I'll just make my own. And I think early on, what I was doing was essentially just making a copy of whatever character sheet was included with the game. Or, an approximation anyway.
Sure.
And it wasn't until later that I started, thinking more along terms of, I could do this better, or I don't like the way this is laid out, or something along those lines.
And I think that's something that was common even back then, because I remember a friend of mine, he made up a character sheet somehow. I don't know with his own little graphics and stuff. I don't know how he made it, but I remembered looking at him like, wow, that's really cool, and we're talking the early 80s, so computer technology wasn't exactly the greatest, let alone photocopy technology. And
well,
I remember getting a copy, and I'm asking my Mom, did you make me 50 copies of this when you go to work?
Oh, you did that too, huh?
Yeah.
Uh-huh. My poor father used to have to go to work, and he'd come home with all these scans of. I don't think you guys played Starfleet Battles, did you?
Yes.
It seemed like I heard. It seemed like in one of the podcasts that came up. But you remember the SSDs you had to check off boxes of damaged your ship.
Yeah.
I don't know how many thousands of pages that made my father, photocopy and bring home to me.
Nice. Pain in the butt, those sheets.
Yeah, somebody put up recently the Armory character sheets. I didn't know the name of the person who did it, but he said it here. It was D.F. Cole, and these were put up. They were printed out entirely with a dot matrix printer, but they looked great. They obviously had been originally done, in sometime in the late 70s, early 80s. The era of the Epson MX80 and that kind of stuff.
Right. Wow. Yeah, I'm kind of obsessed with this. Recreating old character sheets now, for posterity or something.
Yeah.
And I was texting earlier that I actually acquired the original 1977 D&D character sheets and the 1978 Games Workshop character sheets. So hopefully soon those will be up on my site in replica form. But I looked at those Armory ones, and I thought about trying to do the same thing, and I thought, I just don't see that working for the Armory sheets, because that's just it. It really has to be kind of a bitmap matrix kind of experience.
Yeah. Plus, for that one, it was pretty easy. He put the scan up. I just grabbed it, did a little bit of level adjustment in Photoshop, and put it back up as a PDF. And that way, if somebody really wants it, when they print it out now, it'll look like a dot matrix printer, and that's fun. But that's about as far as you want to go with it, really.
Yeah.
Patrick, when you do your sheets, do you use Photoshop mostly, or because when I did a bunch of sheets for my World of Darkness game, it took me forever to do them in Photoshop. Of course, I'm not as talented as you, but you must bang these out pretty quickly.
Don't sell yourself short, but I'm not much of a Photoshop guy. I'm for whatever reason, for years now, I've been obsessed with vector PostScript stuff. So I typically work with Adobe Illustrator and Adobe InDesign
I mean,
InDesign.
you're pretty much stuck with InDesign these days.
Yeah, I mean, again, it was the Paint programs on the Mac back in the day, and then PageMaker, and I think I used Deneba Canvas. I think was my graphics program back in college or something like that. But I've moved on to kind of exclusively now. I'm using Illustrator and InDesign right now. Creative Suite 4. I haven't moved up to 5 yet, but.
Yeah, it's pretty pricey, but still, I mean, I was a huge Quark advocate for years. It's what I used to publish a magazine, and I did all the layout in Quark, but they didn't keep up when OS 10 switched over, and so, you had to kind of pick up the other stuff, and now everybody has learned InDesign, and it's honestly kind of jumped ahead, so what are you going to do?
Yeah, I mean, I never used Quark, and I know, it had a lot of diehard adherents, and
it was great in its day,
right? And it's just a shame because just looking from the outside in, it was obvious that they really dropped the ball and handed the market over to Adobe.
Yeah, I felt bad about it, but the important thing is, these things that you're building, they're coming out beautifully. So, and I agree with you. You really do need to do these fully in PostScript and in a vector language, because otherwise, they're just not going to print well as you go across. Right.
Trying to do different things. I've seen beautiful things done with Photoshop, and certainly if you crank up the resolution and whatever. Well, and of course you can do vector in Photoshop now. But
I'd have to say the first stuff I saw of yours, Patrick, was when I was on dragonsfoot.org. And they had those goldenrod AD&D character sheets of yours, because I was like looking forever for those, or because I have copies of them. I try to do copies of them.
But you don't want to use the copies.
Yeah,
you want to save the copies. So, yeah.
Exactly. And I have whatever I had, but I was like, oh my gosh, he made a PDF of them. This is fantastic. It's beautiful. I'm like. The only thing I wish you would do right now is have a whole bunch of little active fields in there now.
Well, let me tell you about that. I've actually, I think I sent you an email about this a while back, Patrick. I've actually finished putting in active fields for the front page for the fighter.
Okay.
But the thing is, and this is where the layers come into place, I'm going to have to actually split these apart into separate files for each one, because unfortunately, when you create use interactive fields in a PDF, they don't go away with the layer.
Yeah. And this is one of the reasons, people ask me all the time, why do you not, why can't you make a forum version of this? And for one thing, it's a huge pain in the rear.
I can agree with that.
It makes the file size a lot bigger too.
Let me put it this way: to do the forms on the front page alone, first of all, you want to go through and you want to align them really carefully. You want to get the right kind of input into them. You want to have the tab order set well. You want to get everything so that the font size good, so that when they're printed out, they'll look right. So doing all of that, just getting the front page, was about 10 hours of work.
Right, and so that's why I tell them, look, first off, it's a huge pain. It takes a lot of work, and frankly, I'd rather be making more sheets than spending my time developing form fields for all these things. But since I have moved into layers, as Jason's saying, that's the really dumb thing. I don't understand why this works this way. But there's essentially only one layer for forms, and so you can turn on and off all the layers you want. You're stuck with that one form layout. So so this is a good time to mention this. If anybody wants to make form versions of my sheets, I highly encourage that, and that's why I release them under the Creative Commons license, so that there's a nice legal way to do that. And I would be happy to, in a case like this, make a separate fighter, cleric, druid, whatever forms of that first page, because I know that. The layered version is just not going to play well with a form version.
What might be a good idea is, if anybody does want to help out on that, since I've gone a little ways down that road, rather than duplicating, we should probably connect up. So if anybody out there is interested in doing that, drop us a line.
I'm sure we have listeners who might be savvy in that.
Maybe we can coordinate and get them all done and pass them back to Patrick.
Well, and the good news is I don't know which what version of Acrobat or whatever you're using to do that, but I did notice that the automatic form creation in Acrobat 9 handles the second page pretty well. So
I've never really tried it because I've tried it a couple of times before, and it just was such a mess. Maybe the new one's better.
Yeah, usually with character sheets, it's just a disaster. And I even got excited because I stuck in one of the spell planners, right? So I've got duplicates of the spell planners up there, or ones that I've created for Castles and Crusades, or whatever. And of course, they've got all those little check boxes for, have you memorized the spell or whatever. And so I fed that through the I think I'm using Acrobat 9. Wizard, and it, I was like, oh wow, it thought about it for a second, and it put a little field in for all the little check boxes, and I was like, oh, thank goodness I can just, post this as is. And then I noticed that every one of those little check boxes it had made into a tiny text field.
Oh,
not a checkbox.
Oops.
Yes. So I thought, okay, well, back to square one. But yes, forms are a gigantic drag, and I avoid making them. I understand the desire to have them, and I like having them, but I guess I've just decided that in most cases I'd rather spend my time doing something else.
It just shows even now, like doing the form fields, it's still a drag. It's still a pain to do, even with the tools that we have. It's just.
Well, most of the time you're not going to need that. I mean, that's the thing. Is If you're talking about playing with your friends, around a tabletop, you're going to bring these things, and you're going to print them out, and you're going to write on them. But in our Skype game, I would have found it easier if people could submit things that they filled out as forms. So that's kind of the reason that I'm trying to set those up. I don't think there's a real reason otherwise.
Right. And attention, Adobe, if you're out there, here's a free tip. If you would just put those field creation tools in InDesign, I could make the layout and anticipate, the form at the same time. I could just,
that would be nice.
I could spit out a print version and a form version, right at the same time. I don't understand why that capability doesn't exist.
Just throwing that out there.
Yes, that's a freebie, Adobe.
Adobe, if you're listening.
Well, we're getting close to running out of time in this segment, but I wanted to get one last question in about these because I wanted to know how much, especially in this particular character sheet, looking at the goldenrod ones, how much did you have to recreate completely from scratch, and how much did you scan or bring over?
That's a really good question. I definitely start with a scan, like at least a 300 or 600 DPI scan, and like that crazy stuff on the side, the little floral thing that TSR had going. Who knows where that came from? So I scan it in as high as a resolution I could, and then try to bring it into Illustrator, trace it, try to clean up the past and things so it's not.
Oh, so when I look at something like you've got the little boot that's around the move base, that classic picture of the boot, did you actually retrace that in Vector?
Actually, I had Illustrator trace it in Vector, and then I cleaned it up. And
that's really nice.
Yeah, and so and then I used the scan as a background layer in InDesign, so that I can then place the text exactly where I had where the text was in the original. Same thing with drawing the boxes for the lines and that kind of thing. So,
but you're actually using. Well, not PostScript necessarily or OpenType. You're using real fonts here. You're not.
I was actually using the souvenir font that that they use in those sheets. Obviously they were using Letraset or some other typesetting deal that was a 70s thing, but otherwise, I'm using the same typeface, and it's it is actually text. It's not.
Well, now we have a thing that we do on our. We have an iPhone app, and we have the ability to put PDFs into it. So if somebody's got the app, they can get a little bonus. And I think we have some things to include this time around. We should definitely include your character sheet as a PDF for anybody who's got the iPhone app. But another thing is there's a great guide to the TSR font usage that somebody put together a while back, and that PDF's been going. I think it's Artie DeVark.
Yeah.
Yes.
A fake name.
I actually helped him with a couple of those. Yes.
Okay, obviously Ardivark is not his name, but
It's
but
not?
we should put that PDF in because it has a list of what all of these fonts were. Like you say, they were actually Letraset. This is before you could have desktop publishing, but these are things coming from Linotype or coming from Agfa or whoever. So it's probably the right fonts, right?
Yeah, I mean, I helped him with a couple of those, and as far as I can tell, he's dead on with all of them, and it's certainly a huge step toward kind of recreating the trade dress, that was there before. And this is what I'm I'm looking at these Games Workshop sheets from the 80s. I have been banging my head against the wall now for 2 days trying to figure out what font, what the typeface is that Games Workshop used.
Have you tried some of those tools like What the Font, etc.?
Oh yes, What the Font.
It doesn't work so good.
No, in fact, I thought Identifont would work because in that one, and I can hear people sleeping right now out there.
Games Workshop is England. We don't know. They do
right.
things. They do things.
Yes, I posted something on their forums, and sometimes people will chime in, and but a lot of times everybody's stumped. So
a lot of times it's a question of digging up the original designers, maybe.
Right.
Yeah. Well, what is it that you're currently playing now, as far as role playing games? What is it that you are trying to?
Well, I'm looking for a first edition game. There's a plug, so anybody, particularly if you're in the Baltimore D.C. area, please keep me in mind. There will be character sheets. I can promise you that.
You got 2 Skype games you can get into.
That's true. That's true. I should think about that. Actually, at the moment. The only game I'm playing is an Ars Magica game. Don't know if you guys are familiar with that. It's actually one of my favorites, favorite games. Certainly my favorite non D&D first edition game, and I actually have some professional credits in that line. But my wife and I are playing in a game there. But unfortunately, no first edition. So somebody hit me up.
Yeah. Well, while we have you on the line here, you could probably help us out with this, maybe give us some advice. As Jason and I had spoke about last episode, designing our own DM screen for the RFI podcast, an idea that I threw around with Jason for a while, and then we decided, what the hell, why don't we do this and see how it works out? So
I heard about that.
Too.
Oh, yeah, and Nick, too. No, I'm sorry, Nick. Yeah, hey. Nick as well. I apologize. I'm sorry about that. And
I know, it's okay.
Jason, you've been plunging ahead with this project, and you started designing a lot on your own. I noticed you gave me a PDF of what you've been doing so far, because you're like, hand in every project, got to go forward. So,
well, yeah, and you know me, because I got my start as a print designer, so I get pretty excited when there's an opportunity to pull out InDesign.
Mm-hmm.
But so first of all, let me kind of introduce this in a little bit more formal way for our audience, and then we can talk about it a little bit as well. What we're going to do, like Vince, like you were just saying, so Vince had this idea, what if we had our own Roll for Initiative DM screen, which I thought was a great idea. There's been projects like that out there before, definitely. But what we want to do is one that, we're going to make it actually look just like the old, the first 9028 screen, with the golden, or 9024 screen with the golden paper and everything like that. And Hanai is actually redoing the artwork right now, so we've got our little RFI guys in the scenes.
Nice.
And so it's actually, we'll have original artwork, but it'll be an homage to the original. But what we need to do is we have to figure out, well, what are we going to put on it? Because I think everybody would agree that there's things they would do differently if they had a chance. So I thought we could take this segment to talk about a couple of things. One, maybe we could all throw around some ideas of things that we like and don't like about the screens and would do differently. And the other one, since we got Patrick here, is talk a little bit about things that might get a little print geeky for some people, but I'd like to know. And that's things like, going back and trying to recreate some of the old, pasteboard layout Letraset feel when you're working in an actual desktop publishing program and things like that. So let's start out with the kind of techie stuff, so we can get that out of the way, and then we can start talking about the things we actually want to put in there.
Okay.
So Patrick, what we're thinking about doing for this, and I mentioned Game Crafters before. There's a company called the Game Crafters that they're like Cafe Press or Lulu, but for games.
Right.
So if you want to get a DM screen printed or even a boxed set of games with tokens and everything, they'll do it for you. No money up front. You pay when you buy it. So we're going to be able to actually make the screen, and people can actually purchase it.
No,
but the thing is, when you look at the old DM screens, I mean, you can see that these were pasteboard jobs. These were actual paste ups. Have you thought about how to make things look right in that sense?
Well, I can feel your pain about the screen. So I'm trying to think I think I've got maybe 2 screens for download on my site, and I was just worried about trying to make it fit into this. I don't know if you guys have seen it, the customizable GM screen that Savage Worlds people have.
Yeah, I see that. Yeah.
So essentially, just so people can print stuff out and then slide in a new panel, and boom, you've got your new game, and that's all well and good. But I'm really we're talking about the look and feel of the old school stuff and that love for that vibe. So I'm really excited about this project you guys are talking about. Is certainly have run into this problem of trying to kind of keep the quirkiness maybe of the old
I'm
stuff.
actually seriously thinking about doing it the old school way, actually doing paste ups. And if there is a shop in New York, if there is a service bureau that still has a stat camera, actually shooting it.
Right. Oh, wow. That'd be fascinating. Because, like when I'm trying to recreate these sheets, you wouldn't believe like all the quirky leading and character spacing issues that you're like, okay, I'm using the same font. I'm, it's the exact size of this thing, and you like type out the word and look at it compared to the original, and
it's just not quite.
It's just not quite there because again, you're talking about a digital medium versus what they were doing back then, and if you want to keep that, if you want to be really authentic, then sometimes that might be the way you have to do it.
I usually say when it comes to design, and what I do now is user experience, which is a little more specialized version of design. But when it comes to design, I usually compare it to cooking. The average person, or music. The average person could not tell you why one thing isn't quite, why that dinner isn't like the dinner they had before, why the music's not like the music they heard, or why the print doesn't look the same. They're not sure why, but they can tell.
Right.
There's just something, like something's off, I can't tell you what's off, and that's the kind of thing.
Je ne sais quoi.
There's no still je ne sais what of that. Yeah. And so, you look at the DM screen and you can see exactly what you're talking about. You can see those little places where things aren't quite aligning exactly. And I can actually, now that I'm looking at it, I think I can see that this square was done by hand, because I can see where the ink didn't quite touch right, and what you can see a little bit of the actual layout person's hand in this thing.
Are you looking at the original gold one?
Yeah, I am.
Okay.
I have to look at a couple of them to make sure, but yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I kind of noticed that too with some of them.
Yeah, and it's part of what makes it neat. It's what gives it that old school feel. Michael last week from Dead Game Society was talking about things like artificially putting some distress into the design, but I think it's better to just make it and then let it be brand new, although you've made it in this way, and then just go ahead and let people use it, and after a year it'll look just as old as everything else, I guess. So let's talk about the stuff that goes on it.
Yes.
All right. So
let's get rid of psionics.
Okay, so let me kick off with an idea I have about that. My idea is that I would like to still do the dual trifold screens so that it's actually the same exact setup, but I think it would be really helpful, since now we're in a situation where we can do print on demand, so there's no limit to the number of things we could make. It's just limited by how much we feel like designing.
Yeah.
We could make a series of maybe little bifold 2-panel specialty screens that could go with it. And I think Psionic is a perfect example of that, because if you look on the original screen, not the second printing, but the first one, the Psionics takes up 2 full panels of this.
Yeah.
And like you say, most people don't play with Psionics.
Yeah,
but
most,
some people
most
do.
don't. I know I didn't.
Well, I'm going to try to. I mean, we've had a couple people comment on the website saying, well, are you just against it? And I thought about it. I thought, no, I just don't know how to do it right.
Right. Neither did I. I was like, I still look at it and I'm like, huh?
Yeah, but Psionics should definitely, I think, be taken off of the main screen because it's just not common enough.
Agreed.
So what I was thinking about was that there could be a bunch of what I'm calling special situation and special rule screens.
Like a Vince screen or a Nick screen, or
so let's say special rule screens.
A Nick
be
screen,
things. Yeah, so there's stuff that you take from Dragon Magazine or that you've house ruled for yourself that you really like and you want to have it for yourself. So each one of us could have our own edition. There's the Nick edition, the Vince edition, the Jason edition.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
So people could say, well, I want to play by the book, or I want to play the way that Vince plays. Or I want to play the way that Jason plays. Because none of us
So, like,
play
if I wanted a list of, like, all the different, clerics with all the different types of weapons that they can use, I can have that on my screen.
Exactly.
You may certainly have
just
that.
Just throw
Nick.
that out there. Just an idea.
But it's a really good idea. You could have...
Yeah.
So this is what I was thinking. Sort of like you've got splat books, we should have splat screens.
Yeah.
That's actually pretty cool. And in a way, and we're also talking... It sounds like function here, too, because, form follows function. In this case...
Yeah.
It makes it modular. You can make it your own and add things, and
it's like layering.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Like layering.
I was thinking for special situations. Okay, so there's those kind of things, but also special situations that are by the book, but they don't come up as often. You might just want to pull them out. So Psionics is one. I had also
overbearing.
No, because let's come back to that in a second. But
okay.
I had written down shipboard. So if you're on a ship, all of a sudden you have all these extra things you have to pay attention to, like ship movement and swimming and all that kind of stuff that doesn't normally come up. But when it does, you want it all there. Wilderness, a special wilderness screen, an air combat screen, a large-scale battle screen. So something for maybe from whichever system you like, and then splat screens for the different class and race specialties.
I've always liked, for example, for combat situations, and I think this comes up for a lot of DMs, is like for damage for flasks of oil and the splash radius. Also
that's the grenades. That's true. There's the grenades section on the screen.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Something needs to be on there for sure. You're absolutely right. I just think it takes up too much space right now.
An initiative section should be in there, like how you do your initiative.
Oh, yeah.
Well, that would be the Jason special one, because I don't play by the book for initiative.
Well, I do the same thing as you almost, so I would have a special initiative as well.
Yeah. So we would want to do a section for by the book initiative that would be on the real screen, and then if you wanted to get the Jason edition, for example, then it would have the way I do it.
Call it the main screen, not the real screen.
Well, whatever.
The main
I
screen.
think stuff on the main screen you would have obviously attack matrices for all the different classes
and the monsters.
Cleric turning undead chart.
Keep that. Yep,
monster attack matrix too. Don't forget.
Monster attack matrix, yes.
Saving throws.
Saving throw matrix, yes. Let's see what else is kind of a given. I'm just kind of thinking off the top of my head here.
Well, I'll tell you what you definitely would not have. You would, like you said, the psionics would come off of the main screen. You definitely do not need to have the assassins table for assassinations.
No.
That would be like on the secondary screen, yeah.
Yeah, if that. Equipment and supplies cost. The grenade-like missiles that takes up half a panel. The level, experience points needed, number of spells per level, stuff that you only have to look up when you're leveling up. I mean, leave it in the book.
Yeah.
What do you guys think about travel times, like wilderness travel?
Yes.
Kind of thing? Yes, I always like to have that right at hand.
You know what I would always like to have is also the treasure matrix.
What's that? What do you mean?
The treasure type matrix.
You mean the randomly select? That's good.
the treasure types, that's listed in the monster manual in the back.
Yeah.
Oh, in the back of the DMG with all the monsters as a...
Well, yeah, it's in the back of the monster manual. It has treasure types A through Z.
What each of them mean, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Hold on, I'm looking right now.
I think that would be nice to have. But you wouldn't have to make
Oh,
it
yeah, because it's only a single page. This could easily be redesigned to fit on half a panel.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think that would be a handy one to have.
Oh, you know what you have to have on the DM screen is your monetary value, or what do you call it, exchange rates. Platinum pieces.
Yes, I was thinking of that too. Exchange
Everybody's
rates.
always trying to remember what an Electrum piece is worth.
Yes. Gary Gygax's very famous coinage, the Electrum piece.
Yeah.
Because they're always in the Against the Giants. I don't get that.
Well, something I want to put on, and I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to do this, but I have a number of flowcharts that I've designed. And they work really well for me. I keep them around to kind of I don't sit there and obviously look through a flowchart as I'm doing each thing, but sometimes I want to be reminded about a strange thing that's going on. So, for example, I've created a combat flowchart that goes from initial encounter and determining distance, surprise and that type of stuff, then through all the steps. And it has all the steps that you would go through. So this flowchart, goes through surprise, how many segments of surprise, take action for this many segments, players announce their actions, all those type of things, and includes things such as attempting to de-engage and when you get your free attack and the +4 to hit and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that would be really good to have.
And I've already designed these. So again, since I'm an information architect, I play with flowcharts way too much. But I've created one for the combat. I've created an initiative diagram that shows how you figure when you have multiple attacks, how an archer gets to go first and then last and that type of thing. I've got the flowchart, which I did. Now, you mentioned weaponless and non-lethal combat.
Right.
So I think we should definitely have a second screen that's available, or even have an alternate version of the main screen for people that prefer the Unearthed Arcana version of weaponless combat, because a lot of people prefer that. But if people want to have the by-the-book DMG version, that's the one I sent to you, Vince. I've made a flowchart for that.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. You did a good job so far, and then I was like, wow, pretty impressed by that. Are we going to offer... we're offering Unearthed Arcana. What about Oriental Adventures? There are some people that do play that. So we have to probably
we need to figure
that.
out how to work those in. I think what we should do is get our main screen put together, maybe a couple of extra ones, and we can keep on, offering more and more as if people like it and if they want more.
You know what I really like, but I know it doesn't really follow the old school feel, but like how they have the newer screens that are shorter. I don't know if you've seen those, so it's easier to see over as a GM, and you don't have this high, tall screen like you're a big...
No, I want a wall.
No. I like the shorter screens.
I have to confess, I think the new screens... they make more sense that they're oriented that way. I don't think we should do them because it wouldn't look like the old ones, but I got to admit that does kind of make sense.
I kind of like the shorter ones only for the simple fact that you don't have this big giant wall and you're like this monster behind it. But
well, when I GM, I stand anyway, so it's like
same here.
Yeah.
I never mean to, but I find myself standing up for 4 hours, 5 hours at a time anyway.
You did the whole time we played our game at Gen Con. You stood up the whole time.
That's right, I did, huh?
Yeah.
It just feels natural.
You sat down for like half a second, and then someone asked a question, you were like, whoop, out of the chair.
What do you think, Patrick? You got any ideas?
Well, I actually agree with everything you guys have just said. I mean, I kind of prefer the new style. The lower ones seem like, it's less of a barrier between, me as a GM and the players. But, yeah, like Jason said, if you're trying to look old school, I mean, you've got to have the portrait layout, I think.
Yeah, and we're definitely going to go with it because we're trying to make it look a lot like that. I've even done the Roll for Initiative logo in the what is the font? Quentin.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Boy, I tell you, I had a lot of fun. I was involved with Bully Pulpit Games. Don't know if you guys are familiar with them. Mostly the indie scene, Forge crowd, and that kind of thing. With a couple of my friends from back in North Carolina, and I'm extricating myself from that for lack of time. But one of the things that we were going to do was publish some old school dungeon modules, which I hope to still publish on my own. But
you mean from Dungeon Magazine?
Well, no, just old school modules I wrote myself. Hey, in this day and age, you can publish your own dungeons, so why don't I? But I can't tell you how much time I wasted making the Bully Pulpit logo with the old fonts and the old layout, and our kind of idol at Bully Pulpit was Teddy Roosevelt. That's what he named.
Yeah.
Named after, and so I did
my
the TSR
favorite president. Favorite.
Mine too. And I redid the Bully Pulpit logos, or the TSR logos, so like the one with like the wizard's face and TSR. I had it with Teddy's face and BPG and
that big old toothy grin. Yeah, right.
Well, the Maze logo that they used to have TSR replaced with BPG, and just using the old trade dress style, but with Bully Pulpit kind of stuff. So unfortunately, I guess those won't see the light of day. But I'll do the same thing when I finally publish these.
So cool. Well, this is great. So, Patrick, hopefully you'll stay in touch with us and kind of get involved with this project a little bit with us.
Absolutely,
because I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
I'd love to help.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and wrap up the guest segment for now. And, Patrick, you'll stick around with us for the rest of the show, I hope?
Sure thing.
Okay.
Great.
So let's wrap this up so that we can move on to our next segment, Table Manners.
Typical. Of all the evil creatures in the world, I'd like to find one with table manners.
What, are you kidding me? I spent years cultivating the worst table manners on the planet.
Table manners.
All right. Today we're on Table Matters. We're going to be talking about some of the applications that we have available for online virtual gaming for our tabletop games. And it seems like we have a virtual gaming tabletop guru amongst us, which is Vince.
Me?
Yeah, you.
What? I don't know what you're talking about.
That's what you told me.
I lied.
Oh, well, okay. End of segment then. On. But
that'll end the show this week. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you said end of segment.
But I guess you've experienced like all these different types of applications for computers for online, like OpenRPG. I'm familiar with a little bit, but some of the other ones I'm not all too familiar with. You can just kind of
maybe we can do an overview of what different ones there are out there.
So we got OpenRPG. I think that was like one of the first really decent ones that was out there, wasn't it?
No.
There
was actually I moved around a lot in the past 10 or so years, so I had not a stable group until I actually found some friends. So I did a lot of online gaming. The first one was WebRPG.
That's what it was, WebRPG.
You actually logged into a website, and then I think it was a Java-based thing. It might have been. I don't know what it was exactly. But you went in, you found a room, and you clicked on it, and it popped up another screen, and it was kind of like OpenRPG. And you did all your gaming in that little room. There was no voice enabled. It was all chat. And most people didn't have the ability to use Skype back then, so everything was just text chat, roll the dice, and it was pictures. But that was the first one. OpenRPG is somewhat dying now. I don't think a lot of people use it anymore. It's not as popular, but there is still somewhat of a crowd that's around it.
Really?
That makes me feel bad because when we were looking at the group, that was one of the ones that appealed the most to me.
Yeah, there's still a bunch of servers. Like OpenRPG works with servers. Like someone has a server, you connect, and that's
another reason I like it.
Yeah, so you don't have to host it on your own computer and go through the hassle, putting up the firewall, the ports opening, all that other bull crap. But the room has a chat room, and you have the ability to make up your own characters and put them in little macros on the side so everybody could see it, and you can click a button and boom, it shows in the chat room. There's a right-hand space for a map with icons that everybody can move around, where the DM can just control it on his own. So it's a pretty neat software, and it was really big, I want to say 5 or 6 years ago.
One of the things I liked best in looking at that was that a lot of the ones we were looking at, they were over-designed to me. It looked like you were playing a video game.
Yeah.
And OpenRPG didn't look like that, and I didn't, so that appealed to me. The idea that it didn't impose any type of graphics on the players.
Best of all, it's free.
Yeah, actually,
that's why I liked it so much.
Yeah.
What I wanted to ask about is if, before we go into some of the specifics, I have a little bit of a rundown of what I saw as the basics of each one, and maybe you could tell me if this is right.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so with OpenRPG, you're talking about one here that's free.
Right.
As you say, it's open source, meaning anybody can contribute to it, so it's got and it looks like it has a very rich community around it. There's a great wiki, a lot of support, people talking about it.
Some people have actually contributed to making their own version of it, but I haven't seen it really go anywhere.
Good. It's native on Windows. If you're going to run it on Linux or OS X, you just have to install Python first.
Yes.
So that could be a little bit of a barrier for some people.
True.
And not much of a big deal. You can download Python anywhere.
Sure, but all of your players have to be, conversant enough to do that if they're, so there's that side of it. And then you've got Fantasy Grounds, which is...
Fantasy Grounds 2.
Sorry, Fantasy Grounds 2, one of the most slick ones. $40 for the DM and $24 for each player, although they do offer discounts for groups.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure which platforms that ran on, though.
It only runs on the Windows platform, as far as I know. There might be a Mac one, but I don't have a Mac, so I wouldn't know.
Could be a drawback if you have players with more than Windows in the group. D20 Pro. This one's on all platforms, which is a plus.
Yeah.
Similar pricing, a little bit less, $30 for the DM, and you can have 2 guests. Otherwise, it's $10 a player.
Right. It's probably the best one so far for money-wise.
Good. Okay, that's good. That's a good point. Battlegrounds, which they have Windows and Mac, but they do not support Linux. And I would suspect that a good number of people who are kind of grognardy enough to be playing first edition AD&D might also be Linux users. So but other than that, it's $37 for the DM, $20 a player.
And it's also a dying too. I noticed Battlegrounds.
Okay, that says something there. Yeah. And then Epic Table, which is not out yet, but looks promising, although it's going to be Windows only. And they're not going to be releasing with hex grids right away, but they do have a lot of other good things like True Vision. And then the other one, Map Tools, which is free.
Or also known as RPG Tools, yeah.
Okay, so that's the one that I was most familiar with, but I haven't had a chance to use any of them. So Map Tools, which is free, cross-platform because it's a Java client, and you said it's the extension of WebRPG?
No, Map Tools and RPG Tools are pretty much the same thing. It just depends on what you plug into it. Most people call it Map Tools. Some people call it RPG Tools. Just depends on who uses it, pretty much.
Oh, okay.
Same thing.
So now you've used most of these.
Yeah. I think the only one I really haven't used too much is D20 Pro, but I chose to stay away from the ones that charge you or anything because there's all these free ones out there. So what do I need to want to charge you? Like, for
although
instance,
Michael from Dead Game Society sounded like he was a big fan of the D20 Pro.
Because D20 Pro is, like as it says, it's made for D20 based games, and all the macros and everything that has to do with the feats and the rules are all there for you. Done. Click of the button. You don't have to program anything. That's probably why he enjoys D20 Pro, because he plays a lot of D20 games.
So for somebody that is just wants to go in and pick up and just play right away, is D20 that pick up and play?
Yeah, you could probably pick up D20 Pro and buy it. Same thing with Fantasy Grounds 2.
Really?
Fantasy Grounds 2 is actually, like you said, more of looks like you're playing a video game.
Well, D20 Pro definitely looks like a video game to me.
But Fantasy Grounds 2 looks like a virtual tabletop, like an actual table, and you could pick up little pictures of dice and throw them on the screen, and you actually see it rolls, it makes a sound effect, and the dice rolls across the screen, bounces off, and you get your roll. And you can also assign various sounds, and you can have little characters, and the map screen's a little confusing sometimes, but you get used to it. There's a lot of features on Fantasy Grounds.
Well, now I'm looking at the screenshots of Fantasy Grounds, and the windows have all this decoration around them.
Yeah.
And they are using fonts that are meant to evoke fantasy, and there's I don't know. When I look at it, I feel very much like I have to think that I'm playing a video game. Maybe when you use it, it doesn't feel the same way.
I don't know. I just didn't like it. It was a little complicated at first. I got used to it, it has a learning curve, and it's kind of graphical heavy when you look at it. I mean,
that's what I was trying to say. You said it better.
Yeah, all the pictures and everything. Some people, maybe grognards would have an older computer. It may not run as fast and fancy.
Well, I think these grognards probably have a very powerful computer. They just don't want to be running Windows or something.
Well, that too.
Yeah, that's true, yeah.
Or they could be using their Apple IIe still, so who knows?
Well, that would be me.
Yeah, that'd be you.
Actually, Patrick, I was going to point out to you, I don't know if you know about the con that we're planning for next year, but we're going to be doing a con called Low Tech Con, and included in that will be old school computer gaming, which means there's a very high likelihood that there will be somebody there with an Atari 800 that can run discs for us.
Okay, excellent point. No, yeah, I had been following that with interest.
So yeah, there'll be a good chance for that. But what I was just thinking about is I was looking at old Dragon magazine because I do that too much.
Yeah.
But this one from 1983 has these guys, Cabal Gaming Systems, that made these dungeon floor modules, these dungeon tiles. And I don't usually like dungeon tiles because the ones that I see people sell now look kind of like the virtual gaming table. They're way over-designed. Whereas these looked almost like graph paper with just a little bit of extra stuff to them. And when I first saw the picture of these, I thought, boy, I wish somebody was selling them still. And it made me realize when I'm doing this, I want the least amount of interface getting in the way of the game.
Yeah.
I don't like dungeon tiles too. I usually just use the battle map and just some markers. That's about it.
So, I mean, it's one of the things when I look at the different virtual tools that are out there, it reminds me of something that Edward Tufte calls chart junk.
Chart junk.
So Edward Tufte, for anybody who's not familiar with him, he's the sort of the father of modern information design. Okay. And I mean by information design, being able to take complex data and turn it into understandable charts. I'm not talking about USA Today infographics. I'm talking about the kind of things that you see that you would use, say, like in a military presentation when you really need people to understand something.
Right.
For example, when the space shuttle was, sadly destroyed, was it the Challenger?
Yeah.
Back in the 80s?
Yeah, Challenger.
Well,
yeah, Challenger. 86.
Yes. Yeah, because the O-rings failed. It was Edward Tufte that showed that one of the reasons that they weren't able to see the problem was that they'd been looking at the wrong kind of charts. If they'd been visualizing their data the right way, they would have instantly seen where these O-rings were failing, and it would have helped. So that's kind of background of what kind of stuff he does. And he talks about when you're trying to present things, don't design your data. Don't put in what he calls chart junk, a bunch of junk around the chart to try to make it prettier and more interesting, because you're trying to focus on the data itself. So you can enjoy that.
Yep.
And I have the same approach to interface design, which is don't let me see the interface. Get that out of my way. Let me see the game, or let me see the document, or whatever I'm working on. And so far, it's kind of why I like that first one, the open source one. What was it called again?
OpenRPG.
Yeah, OpenRPG.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't used it yet, but am I thinking the right way? Does it have that feel a bit more?
Yeah.
It does, yeah, definitely. I've seen it, and I have it on my computer, and I could
There's a lot of
stuff
you can program into RPG. Just no one has really taken the time. Well, there are people who have, but no one really takes the time to actually sit down and do it. There's so much stuff you can do with it.
Well, maybe I'll give it a try.
Yeah, there was people who put like entire books of how to design their character for their game inside OpenRPG when I was playing certain games, and all you had to do was click a button and you can do this, and this special role did that. So it was a lot of fun playing back then.
Okay, so you bring up a good point. That's the other side of the virtual tabletops. Is one side is just showing your players where they are, and the questions of whether they can have maps uploaded to them. But the other side is all the tools that come with it, like character creation, initiative handling, dice rolling, and that kind of stuff. How do those compare for you?
As far as the different systems?
Ones, yeah.
Well, OpenRPG I think has the best system out of all of them. It's very customizable. You can do whatever you want for whatever system. I mean, I've seen people play Deadlands on there, the original one, when they actually use deck of cards to use.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, people have designed deck of cards initiative in that. So you can't do that in Fantasy Grounds. You can't do that in Battlegrounds. Maybe you can do that in Map Tools. I'm not sure. I don't know how to program Map Tools, but Epic
Well,
Table.
from what I understand, Map Tools is pretty extensible. I know that somebody has created an Osric kit pack for it.
That's right, they have. That's correct. I don't know how to program it. I know people keep saying it's not that hard, but I really don't have the time to. Like
I know
said,
somebody wrote into us and said, "Hey, just go do it. It's not that hard." But okay,
whatever.
honestly, I can't remember who wrote into us. Please give me a call and help me understand how it's not that hard, because I would really like to jump into it.
And actually, Epic Table, Jason, I actually had written to the designer? Yeah. Designer of that, and he said once it hits beta, he'll send us a copy so we can try it out for our games.
Fun.
So all three of us can, if we want to do a beta game for him and just test it out after he gets off the alpha stage.
Well, ask him if he can do something for our listeners that we can provide, maybe a special beta program for listeners.
Yeah.
I think that would be a great treat for people who want to try it out.
You know what? Once the beta comes out, maybe we can use that for our next creature feature theater.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I like it.
Yeah, I'll forward you his email address, Jason. You can shoot him an email.
Okay.
So, yeah, those are the programs we used back in the day. It's what I use now. And Nick, do you use any of these programs at all other than OpenRPG? Or?
I'm familiar with OpenRPG. I've seen it used, and I've played around with it on my computer. Just if I ever was going to get into an online game, I would think for me, that's the best bang for your buck because it doesn't cost you anything. It's the most. It's like the OGL of these type of applications. Really, I just like how, like you said, how easily programmed it is. Doesn't matter what game mechanic, what game system that you use. And then I'm sure people have designed little modules that go into it for specific types of game systems, so you can just download them. In fact, I think I did. Someone did a first edition AD&D one for OpenRPG.
Once you read the instructions, it's not that hard to program OpenRPG. I did at one point know how to program modules and stuff into it. I don't remember anymore now because no one uses it really anymore. If you go to their forums, it's like ghost town now. Unfortunately.
Really? Because I mean, maybe I didn't look hard enough because it looked to me like there was a lot of community still around it. Maybe
you might have found the old forums because they had to switch forums. For some reason, someone hacked the old forums and spammed it to death. So they had to do a new set of forums, and I think a lot of people got annoyed and didn't re-sign back up.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
The other ones like D20 Pro and Fantasy Grounds 2, I've heard of.
Yeah.
I've heard of them, but I am not I'm not really familiar with them all. I might have seen them in passing, like browsing through their website. Then I saw, it cost me much to buy it. Forget that. Sorry.
Well, I don't mind the idea of buying any of these. I mean, I'm perfectly happy as a DM to sit down and spend $40 on a piece of software so my players can have a good time. I just think that it's a little tough if I'm asking the players to all spend $25.
Yeah, that's where I agree. It's like you're asking the players to kick in a
Fantasy Grounds has that floating license too, so
that's a good thing. I mean, I think they are pretty smart about the way they offer group discounts and all of that. And in any of these cases, I mean, we have to put this in some perspective. I mean, how much do you spend on a gaming book? You go out and you spend $50 on a book, no problem, right?
Yeah, probably.
So, I mean, these guys put a lot of work into what they do, and every one of these looks like they're just amazingly complex, huge labors of love.
I root around in the discount bin at every game convention.
Well, that too.
Buy one, get 6 free.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Look, I buy all the discount stuff. Today I carried home. I went and I got my little granny cart, the grocery cart used to walk with, because somebody had thrown out a whole bunch of plastic display cases from their store, and I couldn't stand to see good things go to waste. So I spent the day carrying display cases home. I'll do everything for free, but then I'll turn around and spend $80 on Space Hulk.
Oh, speaking of which, I got to contact Michael from Dead Game Society and see if he wants to check out some of this. But I got the Indiana Jones box set, the original one.
Oh, cool.
Without the cover, though. Without the cover, which I'm kind of sad about. But it's the last half of the box, but it has the main book, it has the Game Master book, and it has a whole bunch of printed information and the GM screen all in the box.
I love the urban legend around that game where it was said that TSR Hobbies, what was it, tried, or not TSR, but
West End Games?
Was it TSR or was it Lucasfilm or somebody was trying to trademark the name Nazi?
Oh, yeah. I think that was Lucas that did that.
Yeah, he was trying to trademark it.
Yeah, whatever.
Well, they've trademarked other things like droids, so, who knows?
Yeah. So anyway, the point was I got it for like $3, and I couldn't believe it. And there was actual character sheets in the back that someone filled out. So I got someone's old like Predator character that they made up. Someone made
Indiana Jones.
Yeah, it said Predator, and it had like all of like the traits of the Predator. Why not? Yeah.
Oh, cool. Crossing genres like the last show.
Yeah.
We should do something at some point soon about restoring some. We talked way back about restoring books.
Yeah.
And I'm discovering now, because I've gone on a kick of picking up old box set of games, and I've realized that I had to go look up how to repair these boxes and things.
It's really cool. You bring all that stuff up, like that box set, and like how we're making our own screens and Patrick with his stuff that he does. It kind of all ties into that. We're starting to see that there is a history behind this game now. There's a history all behind this stuff, and I think it's very important. Me being a history guy, got my degree in history and all that stuff.
Yeah,
we have to preserve some of that, I think, for posterity and to understand where this all came from. And I think in our own little ways, we're doing that.
Well, see, this is what I think was so cool about the hobby in the 70s, is that you had all these people who were saying, I want to play a game, and there's no rules for this game, so let's sit down and make some rules. And while we're at it, let's design some books, and let's just make some things. And they just did it.
Yeah.
And, because it's the whole leftover, the people who started the adventure gaming hobby, and the war gamers and stuff, a lot of these people were from that 60s generation of, Mother Jones, Whole Earth Catalog, and that sort of do-it-yourself if you want it done right kind of thing. So, by doing this now with what we're doing, we're getting, like you said, a feel for that. We're going, hey, we got to make stuff too, and it's a lot easier for us because we've got these print-on-demand companies that can just do it for us.
But I think it's interesting what Patrick does. It's almost like what you're doing there, Patrick, since you're still here with us. It's almost like it's a historical preservation side to it as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
You're finding all these character sheets from like the Armory or the Games Workshop ones, and either you're scanning them and making them into PDFs and maybe making active fields of them, but they're still preserved in some fashion, and in that small way, it provides historical continuity to our hobby in the past.
Right, and I just picked up a copy of Osric, the hardback book. Just came in the mail the other day, and it's a glorious thing. It's something I wish I'd done myself, but. I still, like, my dream at this point is, wow, what if I could actually make a replica of the player's handbook?
Yes.
And get that on Lulu where, anybody could come print themselves a new copy, of the player's handbook from 1981 or whatever. So
I think it's a good thing to do. I mean, there's no reason that there's certainly some of these places that'll be a little bit more careful about the copyright, but if you're talking about keeping it just, I want to have a personal copy, somebody else wants to have a personal copy of something like that, there's no reason, as long as we find a way to kind of step away from the trademark, that we shouldn't be able to do that.
Oh yeah, totally derailed the conversation, didn't we?
Yeah. I just wanted to. Sorry, Patrick?
Online gaming.
Yeah. To recap, I think pretty much the best option you have here is OpenRPG. It has the servers up for you already. All you have to do is get around installing 2 pieces of software, and that's it. Then you just click, you join a server, which a list will come up, and that's it. Boom, you can make your own room, password it, and then your players can do the same thing. You don't have to set up your computer to let incoming IP ports and stuff like that that people don't understand.
Yeah, and so for comparing this to playing in person, I think honestly, I think it's almost all. I think it's always better to play in person when you can have your group there. But there's so many times that, like you were saying, you move around a lot, or your group gets dispersed, or you just want to get another game in, maybe with people that friends that live far away now. Any of those things, and even just playing the Skype games that we've found that it's really the second best thing to playing in the same room. So maybe these tools can bring it even closer.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, if you have any comments on this about all the different online virtual gaming tabletop applications out there for our listeners, go ahead and notify us on our rfipodcast.com. And then I guess we're going to go into the final segment.
Ooh, one of those electronic voting dealies.
Well, I guess that's going to put a wrap on the show this week, guys. And,
it was good.
Yeah, and
I had fun.
Patrick, thanks for staying with us throughout the whole show.
Yes,
sure,
thank you.
And thanks for having me.
Not a problem. We love having you on the show. Oh, before we get going, Jason, update on the Low Tech Con poll.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, I got the results here. We're keeping the poll up for a little bit. I'm going to try to see if I can move it to a permanent spot so that we can have that. But right now, it looks like the in the lead with about 30% of the votes is November 4th to the 6th of next year.
Okay.
That'd be 2011.
Okay.
But it's a close one. There's not a ton of votes in yet. So October 7th, 9th is coming really close to that.
Yeah, I voted October.
Nice. Well, that would be my birthday, so I don't mind. I'm Not Going is in third place. But no.
Thanks, everyone.
No, but it's good. It's good. It's only 8 people. I mean, we don't have a huge number of people voting yet because we haven't really started pushing this
Right.
thing. But I think, and then with the others kind of trailing behind, I think what we're seeing emerge from this is that so far it looks like fall is a good time of year to do it.
Yeah.
And it makes sense, too.
Does it?
I think so, because I think the real two dead areas for conventions is from the end of August up until after the Christmas holiday season.
Okay. Well, October, November, I'm a fan of those. I think I kind of like the October date a little bit better because it won't be as cold. So we don't have – if we're talking November – in some parts of the country, you're getting into winter already, and I hate to have anybody get snowed out.
And you also have people planning for Thanksgiving and Christmas by then.
I voted for November, honestly. October, I'm busy. I go to King Richard's Fair up in Massachusetts.
Oh, okay, cool.
It's awesome. A lot of people go there, and I've seen a lot of wrestlers there. So,
what is it called?
King Richard's Fair.
Yeah,
it's in Boston.
What is it?
It's a Renaissance fair, pretty much.
Oh, okay. Okay, well, the reason I had the November date in there is because that is the date of the New England Webcomics weekend. And I'm thinking it would be maybe good for our first time around to try to team up with them, so that we could have a larger thing to offer to people.
Yeah, so that's a good idea. Yeah, so we can team up with a bigger con and get our name out there and...
Yeah, and they're not a gaming con; they're a webcomics convention. So it would be a good fit because there wouldn't be any competition for events and things like that. But there is a huge amount of crossover in terms of the people.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
Oh yeah.
So go to our site rfipodcast.com. Please vote so Jason knows what to do next year instead of just randomly picking
if you're
a date.
like Jason, vote often.
Yeah, so vote often.
And
2-3 times.
I'll also ask people if anybody's interested in running games or bringing old computer and video games from the 70s and early 80s or anything else. I'll try to come up with some things that people can volunteer for.
Yeah,
and we'll get that up because obviously without volunteers to come and actually run the games at the con, there's no con.
It's very true.
Makes sense. Yeah.
If you're interested in volunteering or you just want to run a game or you just want to go, email Jason at rfipodcast.com or rfistaff@gmail.com. Visit the site at lowtech.com. Is that right, Jason? Lowtech.com?
LowTechCon.
Oh, lowtechcon.com.
All one word, LowTechCon. Yep.
.com. Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
I was trying not to screw that up. Sorry about that. Go there, and you can put in your email address. It'll notify you when Jason updates it with information. And thank you for joining us this week. Patrick, how can people get a hold of you in case they are too lazy to go to the website?
Oh, too lazy to go to my website or yours?
Your website.
Too lazy
Either
for
one.
ours. How do they find
Okay.
yours?
Well, again, my site is mad-irishman.net or .com. Actually, will get you there. Or you can email me, madirishman, all one word, at mad-irishman.net.
That's
Awesome.
pretty easy.
Okay, thank you for joining us this week. And next week we should have Jonathan from Epic Words on.
Sweet.
Awesome.
Yes.
Okay, so
Yeah,
keep it
and,
a
and-
go ahead. Sorry. That's it?
No, actually, that's it.
Okay.
He'll be here. That's a good thing.
All right, cool. So keep it original, keep it old school, and keep your clerics with blunt weapons.
Goodbye, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.
Keep your cleric short, sharp.
Goodbye.
Roll for initiative.